right, guys, we're back with another episode of PFREI, a passion for real estate investments. I'm your host, Fuquan Bilal, and I'm here with my guest today, Kevin Shortle. So Kevin actually has been in the market for a very long time on the real estate side and note side. And I brought him on today to really talk about the state of the market and a couple of other things. So we'll just jump right into it. By the way, I liked your presentation today.
Thank you very much.
We're at the Noteworthy Investor Summit here in California. And I got the chance, and I learned a few things today from your presentation. You've been in the industry longer than me. I started in...
You keep emphasizing that. You're making me sound like I'm old. But I am. I'm getting there.
You're wise.
You've been in a long time. I get it. Yeah.
You're wiser. So, age is wisdom. So I learned a few things in there. And one of the things that really pointed out to me was the way how you explain the ebbs and flows in the market and everything else. So let's just start off with real estate, because this podcast is for people who invest in notes and real estate or whatever type of alternative assets, real estate related.
Right.
So to talk about your background, how you got involved in real estate, and then we'll kind of get into where you see the market at today for those high-end flips or low-end flips or buy and holds.
Right. I did get started in the note business back in the late 80s, early 90s, so a long time, and took off and did very, very well with it. Now, back then, it was a completely different business. Some people might be used to looking at tapes or going online and looking at it. We didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
It was all mom and pop notes. It was all single family homes, and you had to put a lot of effort just to find those deals. But you really had to learn the business the right way. I mean, we didn't even have the internet or any of that stuff, right? So I got through that process and did very, very well with that. Got also into rehab properties. So again, I'm like you. I don't think you're just do notes or just do real estate. I truly believe it's a blending of all of those.
Absolutely.
That makes the difference. You have to be skilled in all of those. That's what's going to open up more opportunities.
Agreed.
And as I do research, so I got into research, heavy research, as you saw this morning. I spent more time cutting down on what I could cover because it just became a passion of mine, because I did, like a lot of investors, get burned with the crash. I just got caught, how quick it was. And after that, I said, I don't want to go through that again. So I'm going to start studying the marketplace. And I've done that really ever since. And I do it on a weekly, really on a daily basis, but I produce things on a weekly basis. So the trends we're seeing right now, again, do lend to, if you're just going to be one-sided, and what I mean by one-sided is this, in my mind, and I think rightfully so, and I'm sure you would agree with me, the note business is the real estate business.
Yeah.
For so long there's the real estate business and there's this note thing.
Yeah.
I always love the note thing. Oh yeah, I heard about that note thing. Wait, the note thing. It's the financing. If you ever borrowed money from anybody to buy a house, you've been in the note thing. So it's the other side of the same coin. And I think people who ignore that are coming in at a disadvantage. It's kind of like going in, to a fight with one hand tied behind your back. So you've got to be skilled in both of those avenues. Especially today, where we had, some of the things we talked about, our appreciation levels are going down. We saw some cities indicating bubble territory. We've seen bad lending practices starting to build up again. We're seeing false signs that the inventory is gone on certain assets, specifically non-performing notes, and that's just not the case. As usual, I kind of laid that out, showing why we have a dry spell perhaps right now. But boy, if you're looking to get into non-performing notes, I would say learn now. Because the next wave is coming. And you don't want that next wave to be crashing down on you going, oh man, I should have got into notes at that point in time. So when you really examine the market and you get down to the details, it will help you decide, I need to start focusing on this now for what this will happen. I'm always looking into the future.
That's awesome. So I know you do a lot of education and you help a lot of people and you add value to the community, whether it's note investing in real estate and bringing your knowledge and skill set to the table.
Right.
For note investors, a lot of people are now focusing on the performing assets until they find something that's in a wheelhouse on the non-performing side.
Right.
What do you think between the performers and non-performers is a good play? Do you agree that because of where the market is at, that people should focus on that and just try to create some type of arbitrage situation if they're raising capital? What's your take on that?
It's one of the most difficult questions to answer, because it does happen all the time. I'll be doing a training. People go, love what I'm saying. Should I focus on this side or that side? Performing notes or non-performing notes? And once again, I don't look at them as different sides. I think you should be educated in both, because performing notes can go bad, bad can go good. So you have to know how to handle those, number one. But I think that comes down to personal circumstances. I'll use myself, for example. when I started traveling again and lecturing and doing trainings, all of a sudden I lost my interest in the non-performing notes simply because of time. You know, as you mentioned, I've been there a long time, right? So as I'm flying, when I'm flying on a Thursday and coming back on a Monday, especially West Coast like we're doing now, and I go back to Florida, I don't recover as quick, you know, and non-performing notes do require more of your attention. You know, there's no question about it. You have to be more active on that. And I just felt as I was doing that, I really should just focus on the more passive things. And so that's what I did. And it echoed back to me in the late 90s when I was doing a lot of rehab properties, buying, fixing up, and I had 3 renovation crews. We were buying about 60 properties a year, so pretty good volume on that. And once again, I wrote a program. I started going out and training, and all of a sudden, my rehabs were taking longer and longer because they knew where I was going.
Yeah,
so I think there's certain personal circumstances of what you want to do as to what ultimate direction. But I would always say you have to be educated and both to be prepared for those scenarios. So that's a tough one for me.
Yeah, I can hear the passion in your voice. And one of the questions that I always ask the guests is, why are you passionate for real estate investing?
You know, it's something I just always have been. Last time we moved, I ran into my old high school yearbook. You know, you can't help but stop. You know, you're in the middle of moving and stuff and packing stuff. I'm going, I got to take a look. And man, I had a lot more hair. But anyway, so I started going through that, and you know how everybody should do right in the yearbooks, you know, and everybody was like, good luck in real estate and this and that. So I don't know. It was just something that just clicked with me, and I said, I just want to get involved with that. And the note side of the business, I struggled in initially, and a lot of beginners do. And I had part of the business, which is the what you know. I was skilled in that part of it, but I didn't have the who you know.
Yeah.
And you've got to really have both of those components on there. And I do what you do, and other people should do. I met somebody who had that component, you know, and we started partnering in business. So networking, this, you know, real estate notes, it's still people business.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's why you're here. That's why I'm here. That's why we carve time out of our lives to fly and go through the expense of doing that, because 1, 2, 3 connections can just completely put you on a different angle.
Absolutely. You never know who you're going to meet, regardless on what level of the event that you go to.
Yeah.
You know, I met someone today that I was like, wow, I didn't know I was going to meet this person here who we can add value to each other. So I always like coming to this event to add value to people and seeing people like yourself. We get to reconnect, you know, continue to make those heartfelt connections. So this is great.
Yeah. I think the other thing, to fully answer your question, that real estate and really notes provide as well is you reach a point where you stop trading hours for dollars. And I think that's ultimately what people, that's ultimately what people want. And I think that's a much safer way to do it than alternative investments. I've tried stock markets and things like that. We have no control. You're investing in Wall Street. In real estate, you're investing in Main Street. You know, you've got something there. You've got collateral behind it. And if things go wrong, you make recoverable mistakes. We're all going to make some mistakes.
Yeah. There was a strategy that you mentioned that I'll tell you what I learned today, and I'm glad, I do appreciate you giving me this jewel, was you're taking a property back, whether it's an REO, and basically it's not in your wheelhouse, there's a local boots on the ground, or you're going to create some type of owner finance strategy. And instead of just doing one loan, which I've been doing, you're actually doing a strategy where you're giving a first and a second. And I was like, wow, why didn't I think of that? Like, that's awesome. So now what I learned, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're putting the loan out basically on a property as a seller finance strategy with a shorter term, maybe like a 5-year or whatever that it is. You're doing a first and a second, and then now you have the ability to either sell a partial on that first or sell off the first to recapitalize and get a little bit of profit and still have the cash flow coming from the second. I was like, oh man,
it's a beautiful technique because you make it win-win, and all you really have to do, you have to understand the numbers. You know, part of this business is numbers, part of it's story and people. And with the numbers, when you learn how to massage those numbers and say, you know, how much do I make the length of the note, what interest rate? I try to make it where people can afford it. You know, and if I can see what they can afford and know what the payment is, then I can back into how long I need to do that. Because if I go into a deal knowing I want to sell that first note in full or in part, I've got to create a good note.
Yeah.
You know, so that's really all that becomes. But it gives you the best of both worlds. You get a lump sum and monthly payments right away from a borrower that you know can afford to make the payments.
Yeah. So you're in the Dallas market. Do you see?
No, I'm in Florida.
Oh, Florida now. You're in
Yeah.
Florida now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But you mentioned that you was in Dallas Fort Worth the other day. And I was
that's
like,
right. Yeah.
So in the Dallas Fort Worth market, because I know you had something in your slide where you were showing up the value of the property, where it was at.
Yeah.
Well, let me finish this right here, then I'll go to Florida. Are you seeing a stabilization in the market, a decline in the market? Is this it's leveling off in that market? My market is New Jersey. I'm not familiar with the Dallas Fort Worth market, but I'm hearing people making stuff happen out there with seller finance and everything else.
Texas is unique in the aspect that it didn't go through a big crash. Texas has some nuances in their laws. For example, home equity loans. You can't get in Texas in a second. That protected, believe it or not, a lot of people. A lot of people didn't like it because, hey, I got equity in the house. Let me tap into that and go invest it. Yeah, sure, they vacation. They never invested like they say, and then the market crashes and they owe more than their house is worth. So Texas didn't go through that. So their market's a little bit unique. It's stabilizing in Texas, but it still has stronger growth than national averages do. But I look at all markets. In the note space, where's the deal?
I like that.
You get over that at some point in time after you do enough. You're like, I don't care where it's located.
I was just speaking about that.
I
was speaking about that because a lot of people, I'm sure you've educated so many people in the space. I'm sure you made millionaires, people in the space who learned through your tutelage and what you were doing when you were on the road or you're still on the road doing that. But people really just stay in one specific buy box where they're looking for this non-judicial state, this amount of equity, or this type of thing. And like you just said, if you're really an investor, the banks lend everywhere. So you're going to dabble in all the states and learn. The note business, from what I learned, is based on the borrower. What does the borrower have the ability to pay? What's the probability factor? And then the property, of course, they do some due diligence on that. So if they have to take it back, do I want to own a property in this state? Can I, get equity in this exit strategy if I have to foreclose and sell it? But I just wanted to mention that because people are just stuck in that buy box with those specific non-judicial states and stuff like that. What is your take on that? People not opening their horizons and really,
Yeah, I get a question like that. People, why would I invest in that state? Because if things go wrong, it's going to take me this long to foreclose. So I identify the risk. I say, so you're telling me your risk factor is, your risk tolerance says that you're not prepared to go through a lengthier foreclosure. What if I could take that risk away? Then would you be interested in that state? Well, yeah, if you took that away. Well, let's talk about some techniques we might be able to do that. For example, in Florida where I live, we're a judicial state and it takes 12 months to foreclose. Okay? Now, during the peak of foreclosures, you could double that. Right? And there were a lot of people that said, well, I'm going to avoid Florida, which I was like, fine, leave it to me. But I said, here's the deal, though. I said, have you ever heard of an assignment of foreclosure position? No, what's that? That means, let's say there's 10 steps in Florida foreclose, and the company that owns the note now has taken it to step 9, which is getting the judge to agree to foreclosure sale. The next step, step 10, is to set the sale. Well, a lot of banks did that, but never went to step 10 because ultimately they didn't want the problem back, right? So when you buy a note like that, people are thinking, well, if I have to foreclose, I got to start all the way over. No, you don't. You get an assignment of foreclosure position. You step into the shoes of where the last guy left off. All you have to do is schedule the sale.
Yeah. So you're just checking the list pendants on the property, reaching out to the attorney. Substitution of attorney paperwork, and you go from there.
You just take right over. So so one thing like that, simply because they didn't know about that, now it's a game changer. Now Florida's, game on. So there are instances like that. But granted, New York is a very difficult state, for example. And New York takes a long time. Some of the rules in New York almost make it more favorable, for the delinquent borrower. But what if you use your IRA? Who cares? Okay, so it took you 2 years.
And
you made a heck of a lot more money.
And the interest is still accruing.
There you go. And you made a heck of a lot more money, and it just took 2 years. But your IRA doesn't care, right? That's what it's for. So different techniques, and certainly you can target specific areas to find deals. But if you put yourself in too small of a box, everybody just wants the perfect. Well, guess what? It doesn't exist, or if it did, somebody already got it. Right? So you have to start to think in terms of risk tolerance and yields. And I look at every note I buy, I look at risk first, because if I don't care about yields. There's too many investors that, in my opinion, that yield. Who cares about yield first? Risk first.
Yes.
Then a lot of times the yield takes care of itself. So if I identify the risk, then the price is negotiable, so I can get the proper yield. But it's never yield first and then
That's a great point. I like the way you frame that. That's really good. So for people who are new trying to get into this space, whether it's real estate related or notes, because the podcast does talk about real estate and notes,
right.
What advice would you be able to give somebody? Basically you've been through pitfalls, you've market cycle tested. We were just joking about that on the way up here. We've both been through the crash, so we both market cycle tested. What can you tell someone new who wants to get in this space to kind of motivate them and let them know, because it's not all good. We've been through, bad times and good times. So what value add can you give to the audience on, they're just getting started, where it's a good place to start? We know this stuff, educate yourself, put yourself around the right people. But what else can you
think
add
about
to
this?
That?
You're going to make a mistake. It's going to happen. So what you have to learn is how to minimize those mistakes so that they become recoverable. And at some point, though, you have to understand that nobody, myself, yourself, nobody can teach somebody everything about the note business in a classroom setting. Because quite frankly, you'll learn more about the business by actually doing something.
Absolutely.
There's so many times, there's one of my favorite examples, and this goes years and years ago, but it stuck with me for forever. A woman in Texas, elderly woman, knowing nothing about notes. Her husband had passed away, and she came, can I do this? And, part of it's like, oh, I don't know. But I explained to her how to do this. Her first deal, which I personally walked her through, everything that could go wrong went wrong. I mean, it was just one of those deals. And now, luckily, a lot of that was before she got into the deal. We just identified things. And sometimes I said, look, you got to walk away. It's the safest thing, as a coach. That's tough sometimes to tell somebody to walk away, but sometimes the best advice to do that. And then the deal would come back. She finally did it. She ended up brokering the deal. Long story short, she made $2,000 in about 8 months worth, so she made nothing.
Yeah.
But these deals pay you two ways, all times, money and knowledge. And it seems to be a sliding scale. So she made very little money, but man, every deal after that, we got a title been there, done that. We can, what I mean? She's like, we can handle that. Yeah. So hopefully you land somewhere, in the middle on that. But that's really the thing. You have to pull the trigger, so to speak, at some point in time and buy a deal. So yes, educate yourself, learn to minimize your risk. If you can get expert advice before you buy, but understand at some point you've got to buy something, and that will fill in all those other gaps. And I wouldn't focus on how much money you're making on that first deal, because again, it's going to pay you in 2 ways.
That's awesome, man. A lot of valuable information. I hope you guys are getting this and really connecting with this. So mention your podcast. You started a podcast. Let's talk a little bit about that. This was something that I started a few months ago. And I think it's great because I learn organically as I interview people. So I'm like, this is a great way for me to, pick some of the sharpest people and kind of learn from them as I interview them. So this is great. And this was actually the first podcast where I had to make notes before, because I saw your presentation. I was like, all right, I got to come back and drill down a little bit some more on this stuff. Yeah. But what's the podcast? Let's plug it on the show and talk about it a little bit.
Well, I love being in front of an audience. I love being behind a microphone, and I just really enjoy that, number one. But the podcast is a great way today to share information, for people. And people, I think, when they listen to you on a regular basis, they, in a way, really get to know you. Yeah. I walked through today, and I don't know how many people were like, oh, I listen to your podcast. It's great. I feel like I know you. And they hear your voice. Some people I'll be behind them talking. They turn around and go, oh, you're Kevin Shortle. So there is really kind of a personal touch to that. But yes, the other byproduct is I interviewed a guy last week on a technique on nothing related to real estate, but it was a financial technique that piqued my interest. I said, get him on the show and I'll share it with everybody else. And I picked up some things. It's called the Kevin Shortle Show. Well, 2 years ago, I started it. I did one episode. Never got back to it. I know, right? So I'm like, finally, okay, I got to start doing it. And now I just have this whole new system where I just send out emails and people can pick a date and time where we can record them. And then I can start to get them out there. But I think it's a great medium. I mean, you and I, starting out, we didn't have all access to free information. And I think there's a lot of
there's more of an advantage now for people getting into the space now. Totally. I always say that you guys are so fortunate. There's so much information online you can get access to, and kind of weed out the people who is not actually in the business.
Mm-hmm.
They just have products.
Yeah.
Because you go to these events and you actually meet them, and it's a small community. So
yeah, absolutely. And these free podcasts give you enough information once you go, hey, this is something of interest or not, and this is somebody I identify with or not. I've had lengthy conversations with other instructors who are like, hey, we're all, some people identify to you better in the way you deliver. Some people identify with me, and there's so much potential business in this industry that, go with, who you like and who you want to work with, and eventually you might learn some techniques from other people.
Absolutely. Well, I learned a great deal from you today. I definitely appreciate you getting in front of the room and adding value, and definitely coming on this podcast and sharing value with the viewers. And you guys are fortunate today. This is a very special interview. And this guy's a hard guy to track down. He's all over the country adding value to people. So I was very fortunate to grab him and bring you guys to get some of this value. So thank you for coming on the platform.
You're most welcome.
I really appreciate it.
Excellent.
All right, guys, another episode, PFREI, A Passion for Real Estate. Fuquan Bilal, I'm out. Check us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Like us on Facebook.